Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. This is about making hi-fi deals. So just know that this is not a video about tricking sellers or buyers in price negotiations. This is like the video I wish that a lot of people could watch just to get like a basic idea of how to generally improve the art of selling and buying gear. Um, Selling, buying, and selling. Yeah, don't know why I wrote that. I think it's just basically to give people a heads up for, you know, there's stuff that a lot of people do, especially in the hi-fi world, when they make business deals. That is just not okay. You can get away with it short term, but it's eventually going to taint your relationship to friends that you have if you try to make deals with friends, if you try to do some certain things that aren't okay. So I feel that, with a lot of the deals that I did, I thought I knew people before we actually went down to the whole money aspect. And it was mostly with these one-time strangers where I had to buy or sell equipment that you really would notice that sometimes it would actually turn a bit nasty. Sometimes you would give them your pinky finger, and they would just like pull on your whole arm. um, and that's of course different from person to person. I think it's very different from person to person, but I think we often don't say a lot of basic stuff and communicate things in a proper way, so that we end up getting screwed or screwing other people in deals. And I just wanted to make a kind of a video about this subject, so that you don't have to cheat another person in order to get a good deal, because you can get away with that to a certain degree um, in the start, but it will haunt you later on. It will burn bridges, so that you will perhaps lose interest in hi-fi, and won't really continue on a long and deep path towards that really good sound that you want. So um, I've been fortunate to see deals between people. I've been like an important part on making a connection between like a co-worker that I work with and some of my friends. And I've often seen that the form of communication that goes on is at a pretty bad level, where both parties are normally to blame, but many times it is mostly the other party that just doesn't properly communicate things. So let's just try and get a bit deeper into this, a bit more specific. So whenever you buy or sell something or do something for a hi-fi friend or an acquaintance, I don't know if I've spelled this correctly, make sure that there's always some form of fair exchange. This you'd be surprised, but this many times does not happen. Um, so I think it's important that both parties, be honest towards themselves and the other person that they're dealing with, to kind of voice their opinion, say that this and this because of that. This is where I'm coming from, and I can do this and this, instead of ignoring your own feelings. I think it's important that we don't ignore signs, our own feelings when stuff doesn't quite look right. I think it's just important that we feel this form of exchange. There is a form of thing that goes on with some people. I especially noticed one guy that borrowed some speakers, a DAC, an amplifier from another friend of mine, and did that in a way where he did not communicate things properly. He did not put it, he was kind of boring it without really, committing to the deal and explaining how much he wanted to pay. And at the same time, he was, buying other stuff with another guy that I know. And that's that. I feel that it's so hard to talk about these things because it comes so close to like the core of how the person really is, and I feel that you have to kind of prioritize ethics and moral before personal gain. That may not seem very ideal to start with. It might seem as if you're giving up a lot of stuff, that you're putting money on the table, and someone else is just going to take that. But I feel that if you don't do that, you are eventually going to lose money. You're going to lose time if you're just not that honest towards yourself. So yeah, it depends very much on what type of person you are. I just feel that honesty has to be there from the start. It has to be about connecting, getting the good sound, putting in the time, being patient, acknowledging each other, having a proper communication where you don't just suddenly not communicate for a long time and then suddenly you're angry and you hold something against that person, and then you go against your own verbal agreement that you had with that person. I've seen that happen between friends, and it's been it's kind of heartbreaking to see. I'm that type of person who's in a way very what's it called, stubborn, and is willing to do some serious stuff that a lot of people that a lot of other people don't really want to do, and it's stuff like in a way being patient, taking your time, making sure that the other person is fine, and just pursuing that thing again and again and again and again and again, where I think that there are a lot of people, I wouldn't say necessarily only in the city, but people that are just they're not patient, and they're not checking stuff, and they're not, many times you just have to realize that people make mistakes, and you have to give them time, you have to give them room, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes things can happen that are bad in a deal, where you didn't get a cable, you didn't get the right price, you didn't get it delivered at the specified time. Suddenly, last second, he can't sell it, or he can't buy it, or whatever, and you just mustn't let these small things get in the way. You have to have an iron will to make these relationships continue. And I saw some relationships deteriorate where I actually lost some friends because of some deals that I was doing for another friend. And it kind of, no one's ever gonna give you a medal on you being honest and doing the right thing. Everybody just kind of wants their own thing, and they want it here and now. They want it for a good price. They want it with a receipt. They want it in a nice box which gets shipped to your door, and everything's taken care of. But that stuff just doesn't happen when you're dealing with regular hi-fi people. We have to be honest towards ourselves, and that is that there are a lot of people in the hi-fi world that have mental problems, that are really, really bad at communicating, where you could be doing something that in fact is fair, but suddenly they freak out and do something that's totally out of character. I've experienced that a couple of times, And you have to be able to let that happen to a certain degree and still reach out for them and communicate and show respect and give them the benefit of the doubt to build that relationship. I feel that a lot of people are in this sort of, wouldn't call it toxic, reactive way of communicating, but they're like in the, they're not allowing a lot of bad stuff to potentially happen, and then again trying to pursue that relationship and build up on it. They're just like, I want it here and now. If I can't get it, boom, then that's fake. Then you're not doing it right. And they're very, it can be very judgmental, where things just fall apart. So I feel that you need to be a very strong, patient person that's willing to do some stuff that not a lot of people are willing to do. And with time, you will eventually then get what you really want. So it's tough. It's really tough. There's this thing, for example, where a friend borrows a thing from another friend and then it breaks down, and how do you solve that? I've seen that happen a couple of times over several relationships. And yeah, many people, I think, handle this in a way where it just goes totally wrong, I've seen this a couple of times. And I think it's this thing where you just, from the start, you declare what your intentions are, so that you're just being very obvious with stuff. I know this from work, having to deal with a lot of people, that there's always the thing that's going on, the reality, and then there's other people's perception of what's going on. And those two different worlds can be very far from each other. And just communicating very basic things like, I'm here, I'm doing this, I want to get there, how can we do this? Do you want this payment over how many months? Should we put it in writing? Boom, 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 put it down. And then, you have to also realize that when you make a deal with another person, there's a form of honor and integrity and just sticking with whatever you had originally decided on. I once did a thing that wasn't, was a bit out of character for me, where I think and I usually don't do this, but I ordered a single plug from a small company in Denmark, and the communication was just really bad. He said that at some point, I'll get it soon, I'll just write back to you. And several months had passed, and I said, okay, how much is it going to cost? When is it going to be there? And I think about 9 months passed, and I said to him in the end, even though I've ordered this thing from you and I haven't paid you yet, I have to back out of the deal because I actually tried one of the plugs on my equipment and I didn't like it, and I feel that also that I haven't gotten any feedback from you yet. This was a dealer in Denmark, a very small dealer. Then that we should cancel this thing, and it was only like $50, $60 deal, but I never got a reply from him like, oh yes, let's cancel this, like boom boom boom, And that's just, I think it's a great example of, if you really want to become a good dealer, a guy who gets on with people, you at least have to acknowledge bad stuff. A lot of people won't acknowledge bad stuff, like I made a mistake, or I didn't keep the the deal that we made within this time. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. They'll just not answer at all. I think, and I feel that that's a huge problem we make as humans, that when something bad happens, we don't even acknowledge receiving that information. That's kind of a thing to think about. But when you only can tell a person a bad thing, then many times it's easier just not to tell them anything at all. And when so it was a bit annoying, it didn't really ruin my relationship with this dealer, since I bought so many things through that dealer. But I was just very annoyed that it took him this long. He couldn't give me a circa date on when he would receive this FoodTech plug. It frustrated me, because using 9 months on getting a plug, and then in the end me having to kind of chicken out on the deal because he doesn't really reply, he doesn't give me a proper answer. It's very vague, up in the air. There's no fixed price, there's no fixed date, and then on top of that, then I heard that plug, how it sounded. So these types of things happen to a much bigger degree, and I would say that that's probably one of my worst deals that I made, where it was just, you got this verbal agreement, you haven't got any form of certainty, any firm thing to lock into. It's kind of out there, and there's just no communication. It's pretty bad. I also know this other guy who had this store in, I think, Copenhagen, where you would have things for repair. And as soon as you delivered your gear, months could pass, maybe even a whole year could pass before it got fixed, and that's not okay, not when it's a store. And this guy, he had such a messed up way of dealing with business, where he just had so many deals, so many amplifiers from other people that he was repairing, that it was almost impossible to get a hold of him, to get a date where he was there, that you could visit him, that you could buy something. And I think that's also one of the reasons why he went bankrupt in the end. It's just not a good thing to do. You don't keep customers when you do stuff like that. I know another guy where he has this store that you just turn in your equipment, and literally half a day to 2 days goes by, you get an offer, then he typically does the job within a week, and then that's that, then you can pick it up. He doesn't do a super good job, but at least it gets done in a very quick way, but at a very, very high price. Very, very high price. So it's different. It's different from store to store, person to person. I just feel that, I just feel that I have to kind of make this video about this, because it's an unspoken thing in hi-fi, that I feel that way, especially with me. I've been really nice to people, actually too nice, that they've actually used me many times. I remember when I sold my tube guru gear to this guy, about 150 kilometers from where I live. some kind of stranger on the used market, and the amount of effort that I had to use over, I think it's 2 years. I sold the amp to him, but I didn't realize that I was selling gear to a guy with a gambling problem, and this really pissed me off. And I must have been like the most patient guy in the world to have visited him in, I think, 2 years. I probably visited him like 15 times. And every time I went there, he hadn't paid off the money that we talked about within that certain period. He always extended that period. In the end, I got my money, but Jesus Christ, I really felt that he used me a lot. That he pushed the prices down on a lot of gear, that he got too much out of it and I got too little out of it. And it's just not okay when you owe another, and he was like a half friend to me, you know. When you owe another person money and then you visit that guy and you can see that he's bought like a new CD player, a new amp, a new speaker, and he still owes you money, it's just, that's not okay. And I've not only seen it with this guy, I saw it with, I think, 2 other half friends I had at some point, that they were owing one of my main friends money, and it's just not okay. You know, you have to, I think people have to realize that there are always going to be deals that you miss out on, but the most important thing in life is that even though you only have a verbal agreement with a friend, that you pay that friend off within that certain time, and you at least try to communicate like with a, you know, almost a specific date that's going to be this amount, and then the next month this amount, and we're going to do this and this and that. But if you're just being vague about it, and you're having a gambling problem on top of that, and you're buying speakers, and this guy was also you know, he had just shut down his store nearby, and he was suddenly going over to his pension. I think he was around 63 years old, around that age. But it just annoyed me how nice I had to be for that, yes, circa 2 year period. You know, it wasn't a lot of money. You know, I didn't get even half of the money that I expected for that amplifier. And then in order to collect on that money, I had to leverage a lot of cables that I did not want to get rid of, you know, to get that money that he originally owed me for that amplifier. And I'm just saying, you know, when we're dealing with a lot of normal people that don't have a lot of money, they get into these really bad deals where they're just not honest towards themselves. They don't set a deal in stone, you know. Even though I mean, we wrote to each other over email and SMS, but man, it just wasn't really worth it, you know, time wise for me. Sometimes I think sometimes I'm just too nice to some people that they end up using me. I felt that happening quite a lot of times, especially in HIFI, and I just feel that no wonder why a lot of people are stuck with their crappy sound, you know, when they're in this really bad state of communicating with people, having a gambling debt, having psychological problems, having physical problems, having on top of that lost their job, and then while they're in this whole state, then they buy a new amp, then they buy a new CD player and all kinds of things while they still owe you money. It's just not okay. People have to realize that deals, friendships come before what you as a person want. I had to say no to a lot of deals that were one-time deals that I missed out on, but I did that so I could pay off my family, so I could pay off friends that I owe. I really don't like owing people friends. I think I'm just perhaps a bit special in that way. I just don't like owing people money. I want to quickly get rid of those amounts of money that I owe people. I just quickly get rid of it. And then, what I do is typically I make a deal with people. I get it in writing, and then for personal reasons, I always deliver on that promise within that deal. So if it's a 12-month deal, I usually get it done within like 8, 9, 10 months to honor our deal. Because I also feel that it supports the relationship, so you get in the future better deals. I could have made more deals with this guy that I sold my Tube Guru amp to, but man, did I just get screwed over there. But in a way, I also helped the guy a lot, and he really appreciated it. But I just felt that, even though you kind of in a half friend relationship with a person like that, and I must have sold him like 15, 20 things, maybe only 15 things in that 2-year period. But I think that a lot of people just take that for granted, that a nice guy like me will turn up and give them their things. I could easily have burnt that relationship so I wouldn't have gotten my money back. It's just painful, really painful, having to deal with, half strangers that turn into half friends that end up screwing you and use your connections to other friends to their own benefit, and then they have this gambling debt. It just annoyed me. And I feel that you just mustn't do these things. It's a sacred thing in life. You mustn't screw over your family. You mustn't screw over your friends. Even people that are your half friends, don't do it. It's just not worth it, because it will perhaps give you something here and now, but I think people just have to realize that you can always get something faster here and now by being nasty to people, but in the end it's going to ruin the relationship and the other things you want to do in life. It's going to burn bridges, so just don't do that. And yeah, I've kind of learned from having dealt with a lot of people that there's only like within a handful of people that I trust. It's actually only 2-3 people now, but man, is it just tough dealing with strangers and just locking in the deal in the end, especially if they don't have the money and they have to pay you over several months. Getting them to put in their, their money, locking that in, it can be difficult for a lot of people to do that. So, and yeah, when I buy equipment, I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. I usually buy stuff that has a huge untapped potential. So I'm usually not buying standard limited sound gear for good value, because it usually can't be elevated a lot. So that's just how I work. I feel that the market on the used market is kind of sucked out, where there's a lot of people looking at the same regular stuff, Macintosh, Past Labs, Mark Levinson, the new and old Aquaphase. It's just very locked, and there's just a lot of rubbish on the used market. So, but yeah, I usually when I look for gear, I usually look for stuff like Abyss Sound, YBA Jadis, or an old Nagra amp, and I feel that again, it's all about being patient, using time and money. You can find something like a good YBA amp, and you can most likely get it to be 2 or 3 times better if you want to do your research, and figure out what the parts cost, the design itself. Um, you can get good deals if you're just patient. So, and yeah, I was one of the few people that didn't stress about receipts and other kinds of faults. I usually found myself in a situation where I usually didn't have to use a receipt if something went bad with a thing, because I had a friend I could rely on that could just fix things for me. Where I kind of get it, if you're a normal guy, you go to a normal store, you get things with a receipt. If something's bad, then you get it fixed. I get that. I was just kind of fortunate to have a friend that I bought, I would say, most of my gear from, that if something went wrong, he would kind of fix things for me. Yeah, it would take sometimes forever, but it would still be worth it. I think it overall it made our relationship, kind of cemented our relationship, where I also felt that when I got equipment back from him, it had just had that personal touch, whereas I did sometimes go to stores to officially get things fixed, but I always felt that when I did that, there was a sort of personality missing with the gear that I got back. Yeah, it was fixed. Yeah, it was functional, but it was never magical and personal and tuned in, and that special type of sound that you couldn't buy in the stores. So I've been lucky. To find a guy that you actually can trust and use for stuff like that. And sometimes you're just lucky. So, yeah, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a bit philosophical, but I usually try when I deal with people to, really authentically trust them and admire them in a way, and create a good form of energy, and try to get away from being suspicious, because I've tried, especially at work, having a mindset that was suspicious, and where I could probably find some patterns and stuff that was wrong, and because of this and that and so on. But if you're able to mentally just keep yourself in a certain state where you reach a certain point where some people that can do some things for you, perhaps, and if you just keep that, really authentic and real, and you really communicate in a very good way, I feel that you can just create this sort of positive energy. So things, even though they end up taking forever, somehow just end up working in some kind of a way. I had that experience with a couple of guys. But that takes time. It's about being real. Not just with yourself, but with other people, and just doing what's the honest, right thing to do, and just it's so difficult, because in a way that I'm the most patient guy on the planet, but in another way I'm also a very impatient guy. So it's hard. It's hard feeling that sometimes you're giving a lot of stuff up just so you can be nice, so you can get things done. But you just have to develop these relationships with like some few people that you feel you can trust. Because there are a lot of people in the hi-fi world, strangers that you don't know, that when it comes down to the money and they don't have it on them and you're asking them to pay you over several months, they will screw you over really bad. I've had this happening to me a lot of times. I also heard some friends that also where this happened to them. And it's really annoying when you borrow equipment to your friends, strangers, and they don't give you a date for when they are going to give you the money, but you can't really sell the equipment and it's kind of locked in that place and you can't really get it back because whatever reason. It's a really annoying thing. I know some friends that like borrowed their power cable that they made to another friend nearby, and they couldn't get their power cable back, for whatever reason, and it's not okay behavior to do stuff like that. I also know a guy, like a half friend, that's getting something repaired through another friend. And he's just so ungrateful, he got delivered I won't say what amplifier it is, but he got delivered an amplifier that's like 3 levels above what he had before. But what he had before was a lot more forgiving and pleasant and kind of caramelizing over all the faults that the guy had in the system. And he just totally took this thing for granted that that he had this much better amplifier that he could borrow while his main amplifier was being repaired. It just kind of tells you how messed up a lot of people are, that they want one thing and they're willing to risk everything just to get that one thing fixed. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying, but it needs to be said. It needs to be said because there are a lot of people out there on the used market at the lowest end that are really going to screw each other simply because of bad communication and being impatient and not. You just have to be like almost masochistic in order for a good deal to go through. Really, you really have to be almost masochistic. You have to almost love being hit to the right and left, and to get that enjoyment in the end. You almost have to be that way. I think a lot of people just can't handle that. They think that life is just immediate gratification, where you just like you point at something and then someone gets that to you and then it gets delivered at your place and then you have a technician setting it up and then everything's dandy and he leaves a box and a receipt and everything. It just stuff like that just doesn't happen. Most of us are piss broke. We don't have a lot of money, and because we don't have a lot of money, we get sometimes into situations that are just really bad. So I think it's important that we communicate this. And also, I had a friend that repaired a thing for a guy, and again, exchange. That guy just gave him a box of chocolates for doing that. And usually in that situation, you would have to pay something that's 5 times more that price-wise. I mean, it's a nice gesture. It is some form of exchange, better than nothing. But again, not really good enough. You have to kind of be honest. Even if you are broke, even if you are taking it to a friend to get something fixed, even if you know that it's not going to necessarily be the best reparation job, you just kind of have to show that you care about that person. You can't just, cheap out on a deal in that way just because you can get away with it. And that's the problem. There's so much stuff in life that we can get away with where people will allow you to do that. And if people allow you to get away with stuff again and again and again, you are going to take things for granted. And they are basically going to, piss on you for a long time while having a smile on their face, because you're just giving everything that they want. But sometimes you just have to put your foot down and say that this is not okay. Some fair form of exchange has to happen, and a lot of people just don't get it, because let's just be honest. It costs a lot to get a technician from a normal store to fix something for you. It's not unusual in this part of the world where I live, where people take $100 plus an hour for fixing a piece of gear. That's not unusual, And then when you get it to your friend who can probably do it for like a tenth of that price or whatever, don't take that for granted. Don't use that person and exploit that person. I've seen that happen so many times from some of my other friends, where they were just like with me, exploiting this other friend. It's just not okay. You have to have some decency, some humanity, at least show some goodwill. Ask is this okay, instead of just like, here's a box of candy, here's a Happy Meal, here's a movie ticket. It's just, at least ask them, do you find this to be fair exchange? Do you want more? Is this okay? Can I just ask that, instead of just letting that happen and not checking with the person, are you happy with this? I feel that with a lot of hi-fi deals, people just did stuff. Somehow they communicated. Sometimes they didn't communicate. Then when they finally would communicate, then suddenly it'd be very unhappy, and it's like, oh yeah, this and that. It's just that simple thing, communicating something that not necessarily is good, but just having said that and trying to have established a relationship to that other party in a probably like a half positive way, at least just trying to do that is such a big thing. There's just so many people that don't communicate. They don't answer back. They say fine or okay when in fact it's not okay. So you just have to make sure of that happening. I mean, it's so much easier dealing with stores, because you go in, there's a fixed price. Perhaps you can haggle and get him 5-10% down in price, and that's it. You make a receipt, boom, boom, boom. Here's the cash. Deal is done. If something bad happens, you show the receipt. You get it fixed within the warranty period. That's then that. But a lot of people don't have the money to get into this situation where they have this safety net. And you just have to realize that in order for things not to get extremely painful over a long period of time, things have to get painful for a very short period of time. You have to feel that pain and take those hits. And did I have to give up a lot of deals just to be sure that I could pay off either my family or my friends or whoever I owed money. And I always paid off all the people within that agreed upon date. I always did that. And I also did that with my car when I borrowed money from my family. I did it through can't remember if it was my brother or what, but We made a 3-year contract, even though it's in the family, you know. But if you don't make a contract, I think that people have to realize that when they're dealing with normal people, strangers, you have to make a contract. You have to put it down. You don't necessarily have to get a lawyer involved and all that, but just write it down. This and this and this amount by these dates, and then you make sure that you make that happen at least within that date, or at that date at the very latest. But don't exceed that date. If you exceed that date, that's going to burn some bridges, and people are not going to trust you. And when you get away with doing something bad towards another person, it turns you into a half mobster type of person. I've seen this happen quite a bit. People getting away with stuff they shouldn't have gotten away with, and people slowly turn into these half mobster like monsters when stuff like this happens. And you must not let this happen. You mustn't let people step on you, and do these really bad things towards you. You have to put your foot down, but in a constructive way, where you're still looking in them in the eye, and you're trying to do what's reasonable, what's fair. And man, you know, most people that were in my situation that had sold his really good Tube Google amp to this dude that I sold it to, they would not have been as patient as I was. I was ridiculously patient, you know. I wasn't expressing any form of resentment or unfairness. I presented everything in a new time unit as if it just happened. And oh yeah, sounds very good. Yeah, I can see you got that new CD player. Yeah. Okay, maybe next time you have that money ready. Ah, that's good. Yeah. Just keep on doing that every time I visit him, you know. And then in the end, I got my money, but oh my God, did it just almost kill me having to go through that. But I'm telling you guys, there are these people at the very lowest end of the spectrum that don't have a lot of money, that just use people. And just make sure that you don't get yourself into this situation where someone owes you money over several months and they just, you know, end up not paying you, you know. But yeah, it was difficult for me. I had a hard time actually selling my Tube Google amp, believe it or not. You know, one of the best amplifiers on the mid-level class. It could have beaten, I would say, most Macintosh, most Past Labs, most Mark Levinson gear. But who would pay for that? It wasn't established. It was modified. You know, again, you have modified gear. Difficult to sell, really difficult to sell, because everybody wants safety, they want authority, they want a receipt, they want this and that. And you know, I was like the third owner of the thing. It was modified. I didn't have a receipt, and you know, even if I did it really matter because it was past the warranty period? It's just, you have to be pretty insane to find those good deals, and you have to be pretty I would say masochistic to go through all of this mess that I went through, and be so patient, you know. But it builds character in the end, you know. When you finally get through this thing, it builds character, having dealt with all these horrible people. Not all horrible, but there are some like half horrible people. I remember when I got my my Vincent KHV 111 amplifier, the guy who sold it to me, he was like, he was really obsessed with Vincent, and I was like, oh, it was the best in the new models and this and that, and he had some really strong opinions. and I think he was some kind of a drunk. I think he had this like red complexion on his face. He seemed like a guy who would just really, beat up his wife and act like an animal. But I saw that at the same time he really treated his equipment with, more respect than he treated his family. So I just thought, going from that and having seen him change the tube to something that was decent, having a decent price, I thought, okay, even though I really don't like this guy, just give him the money and just go away from there. And if something is bad with that stuff, just, get it fixed through a store or whatever. Just don't have to deal with that guy again. But I think it's a good thing to just having dealt with a lot of different people on a lot of different levels, money wise, mentally. Went out to a lot of different hoods where some places you just thought like, oh, do I really dare going up with an amplifier into this really cheap apartment complex, where there's a lot of people on really low form of welfare. You could get robbed on your way just to the door. Do I really dare doing that? Because that really looked like a criminal part of Denmark that I didn't want to visit. And it actually happened, I would say at least 4 times, where I was like half scared to turn up with equipment and meet a guy out in front of a supermarket or something like that. It was a bit scummy, but I think you should just follow your gut feeling, what feels right, the communication from them. Are they good at communicating with the gear? Is it in a good condition? Do they seem like someone you can trust? And and I especially remember this thing with my YBA gear, having to sell that to a guy from another country. Actually had a pretty good relationship with him before that because I sold a cable to him. He really liked that cable, and then I said, "Yeah, why don't you buy my YBA gear? It's gonna sound really good with that." And again, I gave him my pinky finger, and then he just pulled on the entire arm. So I ended up actually selling a lot of cables that I didn't want to, just to get him to commit and send the money so I could send the gear to him. And he was really concerned about customs, having to pay a lot of extra tax. And I just said to him, I just can't trick customs into doing what you want me to do. I have to do this in a legal, ethical way. In this way, perhaps you can pick it up or whatever, and then you have to see what they say to this. And really annoying, but in a way kind of interesting, having to deal with someone with this amount of money. It wasn't nearly as much as I wanted to originally, but at least they got me into the true Google Audio Note world, where things just became a hell of a lot better. And when you do stuff like this that nobody wants to do, you just end up slowly getting lucky. You really do. You slowly get lucky. But again, when I make deals with friends and even strangers, mentally, when I make a deal with someone, it's set in stone. And even if we've agreed upon something and then something changes, I almost always still have my mind of that deal being set in stone, so that I honor that deal, even if it sometimes does more harm to me than it does to the guy that I'm dealing with. That's how much I just go up in all of these things, honor, integrity, and just doing what's right. Because if you just do what's right and then leave the money on the table, yeah, you're gonna get screwed short term some few times, but long term you're gonna end up building some really good relationships and knowing some people that are worth knowing. And because you're making deals again and again and again, you're getting better and better deals for some magical karma reason that I don't fully understand. I think it's just important realizing that it actually pays off being a good person. You know, it seems like so many times in life that we can do so many things that are bad, and justice never happens. But trust me, justice is a delayed process, and you can't always see it here and now. But in the end, you do get what you ultimately want. But sometimes it involves a lot of pain you have to go through. And again, having gone through that pain, you will also be able to enjoy your equipment a lot more when stuff like this happens, And I know this guy that some years ago had this really good hi-fi store with a lot of esoteric brands that you usually don't see. And even though he was selling stuff at like 1/3 of the regular price, or maybe 50% of the normal price, he had a hard time getting rid of the gear because his store was on the small side streets from the main traffic, and most of the people that knew of the store were these like pathetic potential customers with only very little money that that were untrustworthy. So he actually made the mistake of selling really good gear for a price that was just too low for the wrong audience that did not have a lot of money, which is rare. But you almost don't ever see this. But again, because of me, I would say that because I kept my level of honor and integrity, karma wise, I don't know how this happens, but karma wise, I was able to find this store where a lot of people just wouldn't find a store like that. They wouldn't look that long and try to work so hard on getting through to that person, because this wasn't like a store where it's like on the main street and then you get the prices and then you go in there, you like it, and then you buy it. It was just difficult getting a hold of this guy, because he had a double job. He worked in this job and then he had some other job I can't really mention in this video. But that's just it. When you are really when you have an iron will and you're kind of really stubborn and you're sniffing to everything, you're trying everything, and you're doing it almost in the most hard, difficult way that exists, somehow magic happens. Somehow you get into good situations. But I think a lot of people in life, they just wouldn't really want to go through what I went through in order to get to that level that I'm at right now. It's a bit like with Tiger Woods. The level of stuff that he had to go through to reach. I think it's 86 PGA tournaments that he's won. That's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. The amount of stuff that he had to do. Just think of the thousands of miles that he had to run, and the 100,000s of tons of weights he had to lift, the millions of practice swings, the hundreds and thousands of hours of analyzing his swing, doing something again and again and again when it seemed the same, but he just wasn't quite able to do what the coach wanted him to do. You have to almost be a masochist to experience all that and still get on to the other side and benefit from all the good stuff that comes from it. You almost have to do that. So so yeah, I wrote some other stuff here that you guys can, of course, go back to. So I feel that it's just important to communicate and realize that eventually you will get what you really want. You just have to stay on course, take that beating, try everything that exists, and it's many times going to feel like you're hitting your head against the wall and you're just doing the same thing and nothing's happening. But I promise you, if you just keep on persevering, reaching out, not just looking on the internet, but actually going to stores, following up on that one amp or CD or speaker, whatever you want, and then listen to that amp, not just that one place, and try to gather your thoughts, but borrow that amp home, borrow that with a CD player at home, have the balls to give it back to them and not buy it, and perhaps try another amp or try some other gear used, and just many times we just can't really make up our mind and know what we really want and make the deals, just simply because we haven't put ourselves in a situation where we are willing to experience everything. And if you're willing to put yourself through everything, in the end you won't not just get what you want, but you'll be able to enjoy it at such a higher level than you originally thought you would. So very good, some very good lessons to learn here. And there was a lot of text here I didn't really read up, but you guys can just stop the video and go through that. So that's all I have to say, and I hope that helps you guys in making some good hi-fi deals, so that it doesn't only help you but the person that you're dealing with, because ultimately we want to do what's legal and optimal for both sides, so that both parties feel that they get a good deal. And yeah, those are the things I think will really help you. So that's me logging off. Have a nice day. Bye.